Good morning, everybody. It's Monday morning, and we're here for the Monday morning wellbeing show. I'll just give it a couple of mo's for people to pass by and check in, and then we'll get started. See how people are doing at the beginning of a new week, new opportunities, um, new chances to try and make the best of things, understand ourselves, and move forward, and all that good stuff that we can and should be doing. So just wait for a few more guys to pop by, and we can have a bit of a chat. So I think it's quite good to sometimes do these shows and things about things we're passionate about at the moment. And something I'm quite passionate about at the moment is the national epic of Finland called the Kalevala. Um, it's a really interesting sort of collection of stories about Finland, the sort of myths and folklore. Um, but there's a real thread of sort of practicality and nature and things that run through it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about the Kalevala and Finland generally, and then we might do a little bit of a reading of the proem, which is the introduction to the Kalevala, and it tells you that you're going to meet these sort of heroes and interesting characters, and yeah, so we'll have a little look at that because I think there's an amazing sort of connection to the land and spirituality and nature and things that can be quite positive even on our day to day, just to notice the things around us and our connection to nature. So a little bit of a background on the Finnish national epic, the Kalevala. It's um it's a creation myth and hero stories. So if we think of like in ancient Greece, we have the Iliad, and in Babylon we have the Epic of Gilgamesh. These are sort of creation stories and myths and legends that sort of tell something about the national character or this sort of shared ethnic cultural history that people have by being in proximity to each other. Um, so we're casting our minds really back to sort of Iron Age Finland. We're looking at sort of the 800s, something like that. Um, so Iron Age copper, bronze, these sort of things are around. Lots of nature, not a particularly developed sort of society as such in a way that we would think, and Finland having a lack of iron compared to their neighbours, sort of the Russians, sort of the Vikings, Saxons, things like this. Quite often meant that the Finns used to get lumped really by these sort of foreign people that had better steel, better iron, um, things like that. But as I say, you'll find in the epic and almost in Finnish culture generally, there is this real connection to the land, to the trees, to the animals and things around. And a lot of their myths and things are reflected through that in the stories of the Kalevala. So the Kalevala was written in the early 1800s as an amalgam of sort of Karelian and Finnish myths and legends. And what I've been reading is the translation by John Crawford, which was done in the late 1800s, and it's very beautiful in the English, but I just have to assume it's stunning in the original Finnish. So again, a little bit about the sort of the geography of Finland. You have a lot of freshwater inland rivers and lakes and things. So a lot of freshwater fish and water that you can drink is safe to drink. Um, and in the far north of sort of Finland, Lapland, there's times where you're living in 2 months of darkness or a month of pure light and things like that. So there are these quite extremes of sort of weather phenomena and things like that. And you can tell this has almost informed the character and the things that are in the Kalevala. And a lot of the Kalevala is sort of practical information. These trees grow here, these trees grow there. You can use this herb for this. Perch can be found here, salmon can be found there. And there's lots of description about about nature and things that are going on. Oh, so it's great to see some people have popped by. We've got Matt and Jackie and Alison, so that's really great. So, like I say, in the Kalevala, as much as there's this sort of creation myth and mysticism and heroes and spirituality and things, there's a lot of reference to practical things of daily living around the time. So we're looking at things like transport. There's lots of mentions of skis and sledges and things like that. These were practical things people were using to get around. So, like in Viking mythology, Thor's riding through the sky on his chariot, sort of summoning lightning bolts and things, and equivalently Wainamoinen, who's a sort of demigod, almost Gandalf-like figure. He's rocking around on his sleigh with his little sort of lyre, making music and singing with nature and things. So it's interesting to see these different heroes and how they reflect sort of the geography and things that were going on around the people that wrote these things. So the Kalevala is divided into stories, or what are called runes, and the first rune is the birth of Wainamoinen, which is sort of a creation myth. But before that, there's a proem, which is explaining, why we're getting together, why we're telling these stories. These things are important. They're going to tell you something about yourself, about the past, about nature, and how to live. And again, there's so much mention of nature. For instance, trees. They talk about spruce, alder, birch, juniper, pine, oak, grains and such, rice, hemp, and rune 20 of the Kalevala is the brewing of beer. So I've not got that far into it, but I'm quite looking forward to reading the rune on the brewing of beer, which is apparently something that was quite important to the ancient Finns. Um, and again, there's just such a wealth of information about nature. You realise these people were living with squirrels and snakes, ermine, polecats, hares, foxes, elk, reindeer, beaver, badgers, pine martens, wild boar, ring-tailed seals. And there's loads of information about the birds of Finland: willow grouse, hazel grouse, black grouse, goldeneye, kuika, swan, capercaillie, goshawks, ravens, and mallards. And the duck is an important character in the creation myth, the birth of Wainamoinen, which we may well look at next week after we look at the proem today. So again, there were also sort of predatory animals or scary things. Wolves were running wild, lots of wild bear and lynx. So again, there are parts of nature that people can master, and then there are some things that are bigger and scarier. And again, parts of the Kalevala, all through these hero stories and different things, talk about sort of where you can find different fish, different seasons that they can be found. They talk about small fish, perch, roach, large fish, salmon, pike, trout, bream, burbots, laverettes, and in one of the stories, the foolish Yukahainen is having a sort of bardic battle with Wainamoinen, and he's sort of telling him where he can sort of find all these different fishes and things. And it's really interesting because not only is it a story, but there's sort of information as well. In the story, Wainamoinen sort of fobs him off, saying it's old wives' tales and things like that. It's a really good story. So and there's interestingly a large link and influence between J.R.R. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings sort of universe and the Kalevala. Tolkien was very interested in Nordic myths and legends, and there's a character in the Kalevala, Ilmatar, the Water Mother, who we'll meet in the creation myth, and in the Silmarillion, J.R.R. Tolkien's sort of creation myth, the equivalent of God is called Iluvatar. So they're very similar words. So there's definitely an influence there, and almost an influence on the sort of elvish language that J.R.R. Tolkien crafted. And again, like I'm saying about, there's lots of practical information about sort of smoking meat, drying meat, refining flour, ice fishing. Important information as such as to how to live. So without further ado, I think we'll have a little read of the proem of the kalevala. And again, this is it's just a short sort of poem prose about almost why the kalevala exists, or why people are gathering to listen to it, to explore it, and its significance. So, without further ado, let's have a go at this and see how we do. Mastered by desire impulsive, by a mighty inward urging, I am ready now for singing, ready to begin the chanting of our nation's ancient folk song. Handed down by bygone ages, in my mouth the words are melting, from my lips the tones are gliding, from my tongue they wish to hasten, when my willing teeth are parted, when my ready mouth is opened, sing of ancient wit and wisdom. Hasten from me not unwilling, golden friend and dearest brother, brother dear mine in childhood, come and sing with me the stories, come and chant with me the legends, legends of times forgotten. Since we are now here together, come together from our roamings, seldom do we come for singing, seldom to the one the other. Oh, this cold and cruel country. Oh, the poor soil of the Northland, let us clasp our hands together, that we may thus best remember. Join we now in merry singing, chant we now the oldest folklore, that the dear ones all may hear them, that the well inclined may hear them, of this rising generation. These are words in childhood taught me, songs preserved from distant ages, legends that were taken from the belt of Wainamoinen, from the forge of Ilmarinen, from the sword of Kukamai, from the bow of Youkahainen, from the pastures of the Northland, from the meads of Kalevala. These my dear words, old father sang me, when at work with knife and hatchet. These my tender mother taught me, when she twirled the flying spindle, when a child upon the matting, by her feet I rolled and tumbled. Incantations were not wanting over Sampo and over Louhi, Sampo growing old in singing, Louhi ceasing her enchantments. In the songs died wise Mapunan, at the games died Lemminkainen. There are many other legends, incantations that were taught me, that I found along the wayside, gathered in the fragrant corpses, blown me from the forest branches, cold from the plumes of pine trees, scented from the vines and flowers, whispered to me as I followed, flocks in lands of honeyed meadows, over hillocks green and golden, after sable-haired Mukiri, and the many-coloured Kimo. Many runes the cold has taught me, many lays the rain has brought me. Other songs the winds have sung me, many birds from many forests oft sang me lays in concord, waves of sea and ancient billows. Music in the many waters, music in the whole creation, oft have been my guide and master, sentences the trees created, rolled together into bundles. Move them to my ancient dwelling, on the sledges to my cottage, tie them to my garret rafters, hung them on my dwelling portals, laid them in a chest of boxes, boxes lined with shining copper. Long they lay within my dwelling, through the chilling winds of winter, in my dwelling place of ages. For I shall these songs together, from the cold and frost collect them, shall I bring this nest of boxes, keeper of these golden legends, to the table in my cabin, underneath the painted rafters. In this house renowned and ancient, shall I now these boxes open, boxes filled with wondrous stories, shall I now the end unfasten, of this ball of ancient wisdom. These ancestral lays unravel, let me sing an old-time legend, that shall echo forth the praises of the beer and that I tasted, of the sparkling beer of barley. Give me another foaming goblet of the barley of my fathers. Lest my singing grow too weary, singing from the water only, bring me to a cup of strong beer, it will add to our enchantment, to the pleasure of the evening, Northland's long and dreary evening, for the beauty of the day dawn, for the pleasure of the morning, the beginning of the new day. Often I have heard them chanting, often I have heard them singing, that the nights come to us singly, that the moon beams on us singly, that the sun shines on us singly. Singly also Wainamoinen, the renowned and wise enchanter, born from everlasting ether of his mother, Ether's daughter. So, like any good sort of teacher or storyteller, the writer or storyteller is, telling us what we're going to find out about. We're going to find out about nature and these heroes, and the sort of relationship between those things. But this sort of idea of sort of coming together in the cold, and sharing stories, and trying to learn something about yourselves and your community, I think is quite a powerful and interesting thing. And as I say, considering this is a translation, it's very beautiful language, and as you can hear, it's all about meadows and forests and water and air. In this case, beer as well. Apparently, beer is quite important. So, as I say, there's a rune on the brewing of mead and beer. So originally, I wanted to do the creation myth, which is the next part, the birth of Wainamoinen. But I thought we do the prime first, because it just primes you a bit as to the type of language. It has this sort of like almost 8 meter so it's quite easy to read. It sort of pulls it out of you once you catch the rhythm. And yeah, just there's lots of colour, copper, gold, um, which is quite pretty. And at the end, when it mentions Wainamoinen, born of the everlasting ether of his mother, Ether's daughter. Again, that's the Illumata, the water mother, who will meet in the creation myth. Well, yeah, from that, beer definitely kept people warm. It would have been very hard to make beer in the summertime due to sort of the wild spores and things like that. Well, a lot of home brewers will tell you that sort of thing anyway. So yeah, it was probably more of a cold time of year, but people would have cultivated hemp and rye and grains and things that they could later ferment with roots and leaves and other sort of flavourings and things. So, as I say, I just thought it was interesting to look at another culture, look at something old. But again, it's not just stories, this character going here, doing this, da, 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 da. It's also how they live in their world and the things that are important to them, and how these bards, mages, demigods, and things they try and impart this knowledge about nature, or sort of truths about the human condition to the people in the stories. As English people, we're blessed as far as national epics. I mean, we have sort of Beowulf and the Canterbury Tales, and to a degree things like the Robin Hood legends. But this is kind of Finland's national epic, and historically it also tied in with building a Finnish identity, which then sort of separated them a bit from the Russians in the sort of early 20th century. So again, very interesting. When travel opens up, I'd absolutely love to get out to Finland or Lapland and see what's going on. But and they just have these fantastic names: Wainamoinen, Lemminkainen, and Jukahainen, and Illumata. Find it quite immersive to get into. Interesting characters, and Wainamoinen in the runes invents the national instrument, a cantel, which is a sort of zither, a box with strings. And there's an equivalent of that all over Europe, all over Asia, and most likely came from China. It seems that most instruments came from China, especially when you look at the Middle East. A lot of these national instruments, Azerbaijan and places like that. When you dig, most of these things came from China. So there you go. I'd just like to. What would I like to do? Try and show a bit of passion for something, and try and stimulate that passion in people. And that stories are such a good thing to sort of pick up knowledge through. You can find your own truth in them, or to have a kind of truth written in them, either about people, or about things, about life, about the things around us, the way to live, the way not to live. And these are stories and things that were collected over hundreds of years, or millennia, that have some sort of truth for people, or some sort of practicality. So I'm going to continue to look into, yeah, these sort of mysticism, national epics, national stories. What does it tell us about the human condition that we share, and what truths you know run through time. So there you go. As I say, next week we will do the creation myth, the birth of Wainamoinen, and there's lots of very interesting language in there. It's a sort of primal world of just water and air smashing around before the water mother Illumatar comes out of the ether and changes things. So I think, you know, get your stimulation and interest where you can. And part of that is looking to old things. I say this all the time, looking into nature, looking to old stories, legends, and things like that. It's escapist, it's beautiful language. And sometimes they tell us something either about the place where they were written or something about ourselves, or hopefully both. So there you go. You had to endure my sort of poetry reading voice for a little bit, so I hope that wasn't too offensive. And I hope everyone has a lovely day and a lovely week, and we'll all speak to each other soon. So take care now and enjoy the rest of the day's broadcast, and have a good week. See you later.